The steam choked the air like a secret too heavy to breathe. My heart slamming against my ribs as the bathroom door flew open without a knock. Without warning. There he stood, Jordan, my neighbor from across the hall. The guy I'd nodded to 100 times in the elevator. His broad frame filling the frame like he owned the damn building. Water cascaded down my skin. The showers roared, drowning out everything but the raw. Electric silence that followed. Our eyes locking in a collision that stripped us both bare before a single word could escape. I froze, one hand clutching the soapy loofah, the other instinctively grabbing for the towel that now hung limp on the rack. Too far to reach. Jordan's face, usually all easy grins and firefighter swagger, cracked into something primal. His blue eyes widening not just in shock, but in a hunger he couldn't hide, scanning me from the wet curls plastered to my forehead down to the rivulets tracing my hips. "Shit, Alex." The super said the pipe burst next door. "Thought it was flooding here too," he stammered. But his voice was gravel, low and unsteady, and he didn't back away. He stepped in, the door clicking shut behind him like a verdict, sealing us in that humid confessional where apologies died unspoken. In that suspended heartbeat, as the water drummed on relentlessly, I saw it, the fracture in his straight-laced armor. The way his jaw tightened not from embarrassment, but from a war raging inside him. I'd always known Jordan as the all-American type, ex-high school quarterback turned hero in the firehouse. The kind of man who mowed his own lawn and cracked dad jokes at block parties. But now, with the mist curling around us like smoke from a hidden blaze, I realized the flames had been there all along, smoldering just beneath. He cleared his throat, finally tearing his gaze away, but not before I caught the flush creeping up his neck, mirroring the heat blooming across my chest. "I should go," he muttered, turning toward the door, his hand hovering on the knob as if it burned. But I couldn't let it in like that, not with the air thick enough to taste, not with the question hanging between us like a live wire. "Jordan." "Wait," I said, my voice barely above the spray, stepping out onto the bath mat, water pooling at my feet. He paused, shoulders rigid, and when he looked back, there was no going back. The apartment building in Brooklyn hummed with the distant lives of strangers. But in that moment, it was just us, two men on the edge of a truth that could torch everything we'd built. I grabbed the towel at last, wrapping it around my waist with hands that trembled not from the chill of the cooling water, but from the gravity of what his eyes had just confessed. Jordan ran a hand through his cropped hair, his firefighter jacket still zipped halfway, the badge glinting under the harsh fluorescent light like a badge of honor. He suddenly questioned. "This is fucked up," he whispered, more to himself than me. But he didn't move. I could see the storm in him, the straight guy facade crumbling under the weight of curiosity, of one he'd probably buried deeper than his gear in the station locker. We'd shared walls for 2 years now, thin enough that I'd heard his laughter echoing through late-night calls with buddies, the thud of his boots pacing during those restless shifts off-duty. I'd caught glimpses of him shirtless in the hallway once or twice, hauling boxes for the elderly widow downstairs. His tattoos, a soaring eagle across his pec, flames licking up his forearm, telling stories of battles won and risks taken. Me, I was the quiet one, the freelance graphic designer, sketching logos and album covers for my cluttered living room desk, surrounded by takeout containers and the glow of dual monitors. 25, single, out to a handful of friends but not the world, Not yet. And Jordan, 28, engaged once to a girl from his hometown. The ring returned after she called it quits over his emotional distance. Everyone said he was just focused on a job, saving lives while his own stayed locked away. But that afternoon, as sirens wailed faintly from the street below, Brooklyn's eternal soundtrack, the distance vanished. "You saw me," I said simply, my heart a drum solo in my ears. It wasn't accusation, it was invitation, laced with the vulnerability that makes or breaks a man. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like a buoy in rough seas. "Yeah, I did." The words hung there, heavy with implication. And then, as if the steam had seeped into his veins, he closed the gap between us. Not aggressively, but with a hesitation that spoke volumes, a brush of knuckles against my arm, testing the waters. The touch ignited something feral. My breath hitched, and before I could overthink it, my fingers grazed his jaw, rough with the shadow of stubble from a long shift. His eyes darkened, pupils dilating in the dim light, and he leaned in, our foreheads touching first, breaths mingling in a rhythm neither of us controlled. "This isn't me," he murmured against my skin, but his hand found the small of my back, pulling me closer, the towel slipping just enough to remind us both of the line we'd crossed. It was chaos and clarity all at once. The straight neighbor who'd burst in uninvited, now holding me like I was the only anchor in his unraveling world. We didn't kiss then. Not yet. The tension coiled tighter, a spring ready to snap, as he pulled back just inches, searching my face for permission, for absolution. "Alex, I've never. With a guy. Hell, I've never even thought about it." Until now, his confession cracked open the room, raw and real, the humanistic ache of a man grappling with the parts of himself he'd ignored for safety's sake. I nodded, my own secrets bubbling up, the lonely nights scrolling through apps, deleting matches before they could ghost me, the fear of rejection from a community that already eyed me sideways for not fitting the flamboyant mold. "Tell me to stop," I whispered, but he shook his head, his grip tightening. That's when the pipe groaned overhead, a real burst this time. Water spraying from the ceiling in a chaotic cascade, soaking us both anew. Laughter broke the spell first, absurd and freeing, as we scrambled for the shut-off valve under the sink, elbows knocking, bodies brushing in a frenzy. By the time the flow stopped, we were drenched, clothes clinging transparently, the firefighter's jacket heavy as chainmail. He stripped it off then, tossing it aside with a grin that lit his face like dawn over the East River. "Guess I saved the day after all," he quipped. But his eyes said more, said he wanted to save something else, something deeper. We toweled off in silence after that, the kind that's pregnant with possibility. I offered him dry clothes, a soft hoodie from my drawer, jeans that hung loose on his frame but smelled faintly of my cologne. He accepted without protest, emerging from the bedroom looking less like the hero next door and more like a man reborn, vulnerable in borrowed threads. We ended up on my couch, the one piled with sketch pads and empty coffee mugs, nursing mugs of reheated tea as rain pattered against the fire escape outside. "Why me?" I asked finally, curling my legs under me, the city lights flickering through the blinds like distant stars. Jordan stared into his mug, steam rising like unspoken prayers. "Because you're real, Alex. You don't perform. You just." are. And today, when I saw you, fuck, it hit me. Like looking in a mirror I didn't know I needed. His voice cracked on the last word, and I reached for his hand, lacing our fingers in a gesture so simple, so profound. It felt like rewriting our histories. We talked then, really talked, for hours. The hookah hook of that afternoon unraveling into threads of shared dreams and buried pains. He spoke of his upbringing in a small Ohio town, where football fields were churches and emotions were weaknesses to be tackled. I shared my escape to New York at 19, chasing rainbows in a city that promised acceptance but delivered isolation in spades. As midnight crept in, the conversation turned intimate, his thumb tracing circles on my palm, sending sparks up my arm. "What if this ruins everything?" he asked, the drama of potential loss etching lines around his eyes. But I leaned in, our lips brushing in a kiss that started tentative, a question mark, and bloomed into certainty. Tongues tentative at first, then urgent, hands exploring the maps of each other's bodies with the reverence of explorers charting unknown lands. It was romantic, yes, but laced with the gay-capped tension of forbidden fruit. The thrill of two men defying labels in a world that loved to slap them on. We tumbled into my bed that night, sheets tangling like our limbs, the lovemaking a symphony of gasps and whispers, his strength tempered by a gentleness that undid me. Jordan moved with the precision of someone who'd faced infernos. But here, he was fire himself, igniting, consuming, leaving ashes of doubt in his wake. Afterward, as we lay spent and sated, his head on my chest, listening to the steady thrum of my heart, he murmured, "This changes everything, doesn't it?" I kissed his temple, tasting salt and possibility. Only if we let it. And I think we should. The days that followed were a whirlwind of stolen moments and shadowed glances in the hallway. Our apartments now portals to a shared universe. Jordan's shifts at the firehouse pulled him away for 12-hour stretches, leaving me to my designs, fingers flying over the keyboard while my mind replayed the curve of his smile, the way his laugh rumbled like thunder over the bridge. We'd meet in the stairwell for hurried kisses, or he'd slip into my place post-shift, uniform still smoky, collapsing onto the couch with tales of close calls that made my stomach twist. But drama lurked, as it always does in stories worth telling. It started with a text from his buddy at the station. "Heard you bailed early yesterday." Hot date. Jordan laughed it off in front of me. But later, alone in his kitchen, nursing a beer, he confessed the gnawing fear. Then my brothers, Alex, what if they find out? What if I lose that? The vulnerability in his voice, the raw edge of a man torn between brotherhood and blooming love, hit me like a gut punch. I pulled him close, our bodies fitting like puzzle pieces forged in fire. "You won't lose them if you don't hide us." "But hiding? That'll eat you alive." He nodded, but doubt lingered like exhaust fumes. Then came the call from his sister, visiting from back home for a weekend, crashing at his place with her 2 kids in tow. "Family dinner," he announced one evening, his face a mask of forced cheer as we chopped veggies in my kitchen, the scent of garlic and basil mingling with the tension. "You should come. Meet them." My heart soared and sank in equal measure, the romantic leap forward clashing with the gay-knotted anxiety of judgment from straight-laced kin. The dinner was a minefield wrapped in linen napkins. Jordan's sister, Emily, was all warm hugs and probing questions. her husband cracking jokes about the Mets while the kids smeared spaghetti across high chairs. I played the role of charming neighbor, regaling them with tales of quirky clients and city escapades. But under the table, Jordan's knee pressed against mine, a silent lifeline. "So, Alex," Emily said over tiramisu, her eyes twinkling with that sibling radar. "Jordan here's been different lately. Happier. Any idea why?" The room stilled, forks pausing midair, and Jordan's hand found mine beneath the cloth, squeezing with a desperation that spoke volumes. I met her gaze, steady as the Hudson at dawn. "Yeah," I said softly, the words carrying the weight of our shared dawn. "I think it's because he's finally letting someone in." The table erupted in laughter, Emily's knowing wink, her husband's oblivious toast, but Jordan's eyes locked on mine, brimming with gratitude and something deeper, a love that transcended the labels we'd both outgrown. Yet the real blaze ignited 2 weeks later, on a sweltering July night when the firehouse threw its annual barbecue in the lot behind the station. Jordan had invited me as the artist guy from next door, a half-truth that chafed like woolen summer. I arrived fashionably late, cooler of craft beers in hand, dressed in slim chinos and a linen shirt that caught the breeze off the river. The lot buzzed with firefighters in tees and cargos, grills smoking with ribs and corn, laughter booming like bass from a nearby speaker. Jordan spotted me first, weaving through the crowd with that easy stride, clapping shoulders and trading barbs. But when he reached me, his hand lingered on my elbow a beat too long, his smile private and scorching. "Glad you made it," he murmured, low enough for only me to hear, before pulling me into introductions. His captain, a grizzled vet named Mike, sized me up with a nod. "Heard you're the one fixing up that logo for the charity drive. Sharp work, kid," I grinned, relaxing into the camaraderie, until one of the younger guys, Tommy, all tattoos and bravado, sidled up with a beer, slinging an arm around Jordan. "Who's this pretty boy?" G, finally trading the ladies for some culture. The quip landed like a spark on dry tinder. Laughter rippled, good-natured but edged, and Jordan stiffened beside me, his jaw clenching in that telltale way. "Watch it, Tom," he growled. But the damage was done, the undercurrent of machismo swelling, eyes flicking between us with unspoken questions. I laughed it off, clapping Tommy on the back. But inside, the tension coiled like a hose ready to burst. Later, as fireworks cracked over the skyline, Independence Day echoes lingering, Jordan pulled me aside behind the engine truck, the red gleam casting shadows on his face. "That shit. It's why I hesitated," he admitted, voice rough with the smoke of unvoiced fears. "This world, my world, it's built on straight lines. One wrong move, and it all goes up in flames." I cupped his face, thumbs brushing the stubble I'd come to crave. "Then let's rewrite the rules. Together." Our kiss there, hidden yet defiant, was a declaration, the romantic fire of two souls merging against the odds, dramatic in its quiet rebellion. But fate, that cruel curator, had more in store. A week later, during a brutal warehouse blaze that made headlines, Jordan took a hit, a beam collapsing, singeing his arm and cracking a rib. I got the call at 3 a.m., my apartment a tomb of worry as I paced, phone clutched like a talisman. The hospital waiting room was a purgatory of fluorescent hum and stale coffee, Emily arriving in a flurry of tears and takeout, her hand on my shoulder, a bridge across divides. "He asked for you," she whispered, and in that moment, the humanistic thread wove tighter, family not by blood, but by the fierce love that defies convention. I burst into his room as dawn broke, finding him bandaged and bruised, but alive, his eyes lighting like beacons when they met mine. "Couldn't let you hog all the heroics," I teased, voice thick, collapsing into the chair beside him. He reached for my hand, for lines be damned, pulling me close enough to smell the antiseptic and him, the man who'd walked in my shower and straight into my heart. "Alex, I almost didn't make it out. And all I could think was, I need you. Us. No more hiding." Tears stung, but they were cathartic, washing away the remnants of doubt. "Then don't. Come out with me, on your terms. But out. We plan it there. In that sterile sanctuary, a quiet dinner with his crew, where he'd stand and say the words that would either shatter or solidify his world." The days of recovery blurred into a tender rhythm, me fetching his pain meds, him sketching clumsy hearts on my sketch pad with his good hand, our love deepening in the quiet acts of care. The dinner arrived like a storm front, at a dimly lit Italian joint in Williamsburg, the long table groaning under platters of veal and Chianti. The crew filed in, rowdy as ever, Mike at the head with stories of the blaze. Jordan sat beside me, his sling a badge of battles past, his free hand drumming nerves on his thigh under the table. Midway through, as gelato bowls emptied, he cleared his throat, the sound slicing through the din like a siren. "Guys," he started, voice steady despite the tremor I felt in his grip. "There's something I need to say. About why I pushed through that warehouse." Eyes turned, expectant, and he squeezed my hand once, twice. It wasn't just a job. It was him. He nodded to me, the room stilling as he laid it bare, the walk-in, the awakening, the love that had pulled him from the rubble, not just physically, but spiritually. Gasps mingled with nods, Tommy's face paling, then softening into a sheepish grin. Mike raised his glass first. To Jordan, saving his own ass for once. Laughter erupted, genuine and embracing, the tension dissolving into toasts that honored not just the man, but the truth he claimed. In the aftermath, as we walked home under a canopy of stars, Brooklyn's rare, clear night, Jordan stopped on the stoop, pulling me into an embrace that mended every fracture. "You changed everything, Alex." Made me brave. I kissed him then, deep and unhurried, the world fading to the beat of our hearts. We changed it. Together, months unfurled like pages in a well-loved book, our lives intertwining with the grace of inevitability. Jordan returned to the firehouse, his coming out a catalyst for quiet conversations among the ranks, ripples of acceptance that proved humanity's better angels prevail. I landed a book cover gig for a queer memoir, my designs infused with the colors of our story, bold reds of passion, soft blues of trust. We adopted a scruffy rescue mutt named Ember. Walks along the promenade, becoming rituals of whispered futures, maybe a place upstate. Kids someday, through whatever path called. Yet the drama lingered in echoes, a tense call from his parents, laced with confusion, but ending in cautious invitation, my own family back in Seattle. Bridging gaps with video calls that grew warmer with time. Through it all, our love was the anchor, romantic in stolen sunsets on the roof. Tense in arguments over his overtime risks, Emotional in the nights, we held each other against the world's tempests. One crisp autumn evening, a year to the day of that fateful shower, Jordan dropped to one knee in our living room, the skyline twinkling beyond the window like confetti. No ring yet, just a simple band from his mother's heirlooms. Repurposed with an engraving, one door opened. "Marry me, Alex. Let's make forever official." Tears blurred my yes. And as we collapsed, laughing into each other's arms, I knew the hook that started it all had reeled in a lifetime. In the end, it wasn't about labels or lines crossed. It was about the profound humanity of choosing love, raw and unfiltered, in a world that too often dims its light. We build a life from that accidental glimpse, proving that sometimes the greatest changes come not from grand gestures, but from the courage to stay when the door swings wide.